Hello and welcome to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. We get curious about all things gender, sex, and sexuality, as well as relationships, feminism, the inclusive kind, mental health and kink, and all that makes us humans unique and diverse. From body positivity to body dysmorphia, it's all welcome here. Come with us on a journey of inclusion, acceptance, and respect. I'm your host, Esther Lemons. I identify as a cisgender woman, and my pronouns are she and her. In this episode, I have a conversation with Jay Genesis, a German living in the UK and lover of languages, podcasts, and art. Jay's pronouns are any except he and she, with the neopronouns v, ver, viz as a favourite. V uses the gender labels trans-androgynous, genderqueer, nonbinary, abinary, and maverique. Other labels include bi-pan-oriented aroace and multiply disabled. Find out what that means to Jay in this episode. We also talk about what the label queer can encompass, different types of attraction and how they can be experienced, love languages, anarchy and feminism, sovereignty versus autonomy, the issues with the gender terminology in different languages, and feeling safe when you're part of the minority of the minority. To clarify some terminology that is used in the episode, allo is allosexual, meaning to experience sexual attraction, cis is cisgender, het is heterosexual, perisex, also endosex or dyadic, meaning not intersex. Amab is assigned male at birth. Afab is assigned female at birth. And aroace is aromantic and asexual. It was recorded on the 13th of May 2021. Now let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome. What's your name?
Jay.
And how do you identify, Jay? And do you use that language of identifying as?
Not really. I just say I'm trans-androgynous and mostly just say genderqueer, but I do have some other labels that I sometimes use depending on occasion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Other labels I use are, non-binary and abinary and maverique as well.
Right. Yeah. Some of these are newer to me. I've come across them, but I don't really know what they mean. So, I mean, how does that all fit together for you and what do those labels mean to you?
Well, genderqueer and non-binary essentially mean the same thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're both umbrella terms for like genders that are not exclusively male female, so I use it, and at this point I don't know why genderqueer feels more right to me, so I tend to use it more often.
Okay.
And then transandrogynous, as opposed to transmasculine or transfeminine, to me means I try to be more androgynous, and in some ways I feel like parts of me are both transfeminine and transmasculine at the same time, but also
Ah,
neither. I don't know. It's complicated.
yeah.
And
Wow.
then abinary is actually an umbrella term for any gender, like no gender, well, agender people that are not related to male or female at all. So that's why agender people are in there, because no gender is not related to the binary. And
Mm.
then my most specific label is maverique, which is like a specific gender that's completely unrelated to the binary. It's
Mm-hmm.
not derived from either, and that's what I like to use sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was intrigued by the abinary because obviously I've heard of non-binary and I've heard of agender. So do you feel like that is that like a combination of the two or is that something separate again?
A-binary is a bit more specific than non-binary, because non-binary can also include like non-binary women and non-binary men and gender fluid people who might
Mm.
be sometimes male or female, but like a-binary just means it can also be like gender fluid, but just not be related to male or female at all, or like, as I said,
Mm-hmm.
having no gender at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Tell me a bit more about the maverick and what that means to you. I'm just trying to get my head around all that.
Yeah, for a long time I thought I was agender, because I thought
Mm-hmm.
the only way to be as separate from male as from female would be to not have a gender at all. But then I came across that word on Reddit, and it was coined in 2014 on Tumblr.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it was. But I find it. I don't know. I liked how it sounds. I looked up the definition, and it's just a specific gender that's completely unrelated from any of the binary genders, but it's at the same time it's a strong. I have a strong sense of gender, so I like that. I mean, because that's my age, and that doesn't fit me at all, really. But I thought it did.
Okay. Fascinating. You just said you have a strong sense of gender.
Yeah.
How does that show up?
Well, because some people might be like partially a gender or anything, but I feel like my gender's like 100%. Some people might be like partially female or something, as opposed to like 100%. But like I'm not partially anything. I'm just 100% maverique. So that's what I mean by a strong sense of gender. Like I just
Yeah. So it could just 100% you, really, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah, Maverick. I'll have to maybe look into it a bit more because I'm still trying to. It's a bit unclear to me what it is. Still, it's like I haven't even looked
Yeah.
up the definition of it. Do you know what the definition of Maverick is when you look it up? How is it
Um.
described?
Well, it is described as a gender that's separate, like a specific gender, not an
Mm-hmm.
umbrella term or anything that's like separate from
Mm-hmm.
male and female. It's not derived from anything. Like it's not even like partially male and female. It's like completely separate. Like they don't even touch.
Okay. Yeah, it's like I'm learning so much, and it's like, wow, I need to get my head around that one. So, when did you adopt that term?
In 2018, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like that's quite? I mean, you say you feel like 100% that. Is that something you feel like will stick with you, or are you because of the whole? Do you feel it's quite a fluid thing for you, and you might evolve into other terms as they arise? I guess that's always an option, I suppose. But how do you
Yeah.
feel about it?
I mean, my gender has been pretty static. I just misunderstood it at first. So
Right.
it's possible that it will change, but like it hasn't changed for the last 4 years, really.
Mm-hmm.
Only my
Mm-hmm.
understanding has shifted a bit.
Mm. That's really interesting. Have you always had a sense of having like this different than binary experience? Is that something that's been with you always?
I would say so, but I just didn't have like the language for it or the
Hmm.
concept. Like all I
Yeah.
knew when I grew up is about I knew about trans women, I knew about trans men, even though there was less trans men than trans women in the media. But
Hmm.
I don't know, I just figured they existed and I did say some, but I didn't know there was anything else. And then when I first heard about it in like a positive context, I was like, oh wait, that was always me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just looking at some other labels you provided, for the conversation. You also used the term queer.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? I like the word queer, so I relate to it as well, but I think we all experience it in different ways.
Well, I use it for as an umbrella term for all my different queer identities. Like I like to use it for my gender, but I also like to use it for my orientation.
Mm-hmm.
So it just means anything that is not like allo, cis, het, and perisex. You know, perisex meaning not intersex. If people consider that a part of that.
Ah, okay. I'm not sure I knew that term either. Yay,
Well,
learning all the time.
there's several terms. I don't know
Yeah.
which is the preferred one. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of hard.
Yeah, yeah, it is a bit, isn't it? Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, how do you feel your sexuality or sexual orientation and gender fit together?
Well, my sexual orientation is asexual, and I don't know. I never really viewed them really like as related or anything. I mean, I knew I was asexual way before I knew I was non-binary, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that asexuality was actually like queer. I just didn't know that until I actually
Mm.
entered the queer community because of my gender.
Right.
But I always thought with other attractions that are like not sexual, I thought I was into men only.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how they're kind of related because as I realized I was genderqueer, I also my whole understanding of gender started to shift. So I became more open to the possibility of like being attracted to other genders, and then once I was actually open to the possibility, it actually like really, really started. I mean, looking back, there were some signs that I was not only into men, but I didn't. It was like a weird subconscious thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
once it all changed, I don't know, it was like a lot more in the front of my brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you mentioned the terms bi or pan, and also you just mentioned asexual. So, do you feel like how does that fit together for you? So you do feel attraction, but
Yeah.
just not in a sexual way. How does that work?
I'm actually both asexual and aromantic.
Okay.
I only found out I was aromantic a few months ago, actually.
Oh, wow.
But the attraction I do feel is not sexual or romantic. It's like sensual. So to
Mm.
me, I don't know. For example, I look at someone and I'm like, I would make out with this person, but to me, making out is like neither sexual nor romantic. Like I don't know. I don't really care
Right.
about the sex bit, and I don't want to enter a serious relationship with this person because I think they're hot or something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you want to do with the person when you have those feelings?
I don't know. Kiss them,
Hmm.
make out with them,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah. You say sensual, so that can
yeah,
include, well,
yeah.
a lot of things, can't it? In a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
I mean, I do. I also do feel there's this term called alterous attraction. Like alterous, it's
Hmm.
attraction is like attraction that can't be classified as clearly romantic or platonic. I've heard it
Hmm.
referred to as like the non-binary of attraction, because it's
Oh, I
like
love that.
it can't really like, put into either box. So I do feel
Mm.
that because I don't feel like my attraction is really romantic that I do feel to other people because I do have a partner. I always thought what I felt towards him was like romantic attraction, but it's actually not. Because I
Mm.
don't. Romance is like so subjective, like what people consider to be romance for themselves, because some people consider like sleeping in the same bed romantic, but I don't know. It's like very
Mm.
subjective.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
That's
kind
fair.
of hard to figure out like whether you experience romantic attraction or like another kind of attraction if you do some of these things. But I don't do like these. I don't know, like I don't want my partner to like buy me flowers or chocolates or anything, which is like
Yeah.
really weird romantic stuff. Like I'm not into that really. So it doesn't play into
Right.
my attraction. Like and like other stuff as
Yeah.
well. Like I don't only base that off of that. But like yeah, it's like a lot more stuff than that. But like that's all that things that I consider to be romantic, and they don't play a part in my attraction, which is why I say I do not experience romantic attraction.
Mm. Yeah, that's such a fascinating subject, isn't it? Because what we
Yeah,
perceive as romantic, it's very much like also a construct, isn't it? And it's very much
exactly.
based in like a cis het normative
Yeah,
culture, I suppose, and society. So I know what you mean. It's like, have you heard of love languages?
yeah.
That's an interesting one. I mean, what do you feel your love language is?
Definitely physical touch. I
Mm.
love hugs and cuddles.
Oh, they're the best, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah.
But that's also what makes it so hard to when you're questioning whether you're on the aromantic spectrum or not, it's like so
Mm.
hard to figure that out because it's so subjective because
Mm.
what one person considers romantic could be like non romantic to someone else. Like it's not as like clear cut as like
Mm.
sex where you have like some actions that are like undebatably sexual.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. And I
really
think so
complicated.
much, yeah, and so much I think is assumed, like in a cis normative way again.
Yeah.
We all make so many assumptions, but when you start actually questioning, I think questioning is a good place to be in, to be fair, just for
Yeah.
yourself. Like it doesn't have to be gender or, even sexuality or whatever. It's just like, what do I want? What do I need? And what works for me, what doesn't. I think we
Yeah.
don't do enough of it, to be honest. So,
Honestly, I never like question like who I was and what label fits me. I never liked being in that space, but then
mm,
I like it, like just learning new stuff and like maybe seeing what I feel a bit differently and that kind of stuff. Like my,
yeah.
yeah,
So, what do you like about all the labels we've just talked about? And what do you like about using them?
I like that they are specific and describe exactly how I feel.
Mm, yeah.
I don't always use them at the same time. Like it really depends on the situation.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so many different labels that like would fit me.
Yeah, and it's great for communication, I suppose, isn't
Yeah.
it? Or it can be pretty good. But
It's
then,
also like,
even,
oh, sorry.
yeah, go for it.
It's also really good to maybe understand yourself a bit better. Like, even if you read
Yeah,
about a label, and even if it doesn't fit you, you may have been exposed to something that you didn't know before.
yeah. And I think it's nice because you can use them to either, well, to both communicate with other people, but everyone will have their own meaning or give their own meaning to them as well. So it's
Yeah.
still like I've interviewed or I've had conversations with quite a few non-binary people, and no two are the same, and no two experience their non-binariness in the same way,
Yeah.
and for some it's like really a solid identity, and for others it was like a stop, like a station on the way to something else, like unknown destination for gender. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what other stuff is it about yourself that you'd like to talk about? You mentioned about being disabled.
Yeah, I am disabled. Like, I'm autistic and I have some mental health issues, and I'm
Hmm.
also partially sighted.
Okay.
And that intersects like with my queerness sometimes, especially like with my gender, because sometimes cis disabled people try to use their disability as an excuse to not respect someone's pronoun because they're like, oh, it's too complicated for me and I can't learn this because I'm autistic, and I'm just sitting there as an autistic trans person, like, really? I mean, I did this,
Mm.
but that's because like my life depends on it, and cis people just doesn't, and it just shows like cis privilege again. Like,
Mm.
you don't have to learn about this to be content in your life. Like, you
Hmm.
can choose whether to do that or not, and they just hide behind their disability. I've noticed, like, especially like cis women who do that, because then they can like use their disability and their womanhood as to say like, oh, we're so oppressed by the trans disabled people. I'm like,
Mm.
no.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes it feels like I have to choose between my queerness or my disability, because it doesn't feel like I'm very safe in disabled spaces as a trans
Mm.
person, especially. But
Right.
also, well, because so many people, because if I say like I'm aromantic, I'm asexual, and I'm bi, people are going to assume that it's like what's the word, contradictory.
Yeah.
And then they try to explain your identity. It's like, really, I'm just trying to exist in this space or whatever. Or many people
Yeah.
even think being non-binary and using the label bi that shouldn't exist, because like bi is binary, but it's actually not. I mean, it depends on the person, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And then it feels like I have to choose what spaces to be in, and I tend to choose queer spaces, because I feel like, especially my gender, tends to have like more of an impact on my everyday life, I guess. I don't even know why, but that kind of leads to me not learning as much as well as about like disability justice, and I probably should. And it's not good. Like, it makes me really sad actually, but I don't feel
Mm.
very safe. Like, I feel more safe as a disabled person in queer spaces than as a queer person in disabled spaces. I don't know why that is, but
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense though. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like, especially in the trans community, that there's so many autistic people. I don't
Hmm.
know why. There's a lot of us.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. What do you feel needs to happen, or what would you like to see happen when it comes to disabled spaces?
People just need to make sure they make them friendly towards other minorities as well, because it's like the thing of being the minority in the minority again. I mean,
Hmm.
I can't speak for that obviously, but I feel like people of color probably have a very similar, or like a somewhat similar experience in that, because
Hmm.
certain spaces just, I don't know, it's this thing of people thinking if you're part of one minority, you can't be part of another minority, because otherwise it just would be too much, and they think of you as like a unicorn that really doesn't exist.
Mm.
People
Yeah.
need to get it in their heads that you can be like part of like two or three or four minorities at the same time and make their spaces safer.
Hmm.
Yeah, like, have, for example, like trans people of color who are disabled, have them organize the spaces to make sure like trans people and people of color who are disabled are actually safe in those spaces,
Hmm. Yeah.
because people just forget about the different intersectional experience, because the more minority intersections you have, the less space there is for you in the world.
Mm. Yeah. 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 Like the more of those boxes you tick,
Yeah,
the rarer it is to find a space that is inclusive enough for all of them.
yeah.
Yeah. And safe enough, as you say. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I already kind of have the problem sometimes. Like, even just in queer spaces, because I have like so many different things going on that sometimes it feels like I don't truly belong anywhere, because sometimes when I'm at trans spaces, people are like, "Oh, but you're not binary, so you're not really trans." And then I'm in non-binary places, and there's also sometimes so many people who insist like non-binary is something completely different from trans, because they think of trans is only binary as well. And I don't know. Then I'm in like bi spaces, and they insist that pan orientation is like anti-bi, and it's really weird. I've had so much like hostility against me because I identify as bi, but also or like pan, whatever I use at this moment. But also as like aromantic asexual, and people they insist on explaining my own orientation to me, even though they are not me and they don't understand. Like all they need to know is like
Wow.
I am bi,
Yeah.
but like I don't know, because it's like so complex. Then people just like having one or two identities. I mean, sometimes it's even hard, or if you have like two labels that you use, because for example, like a gay trans man with like two queer identities already has a harder time in gay spaces, and that's just
Yeah.
times 4.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like I've been embracing more and more labels of my own recently, and
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, I'm pansexual as well, so I can relate to that in a way. Yeah, in my own way, I suppose, because to me, I prefer it to bisexual, because
Yeah,
for me it fits better and it feels more inclusive to me.
yeah,
But I know some people who are bi and they would basically define it as like being attracted to just people, all people.
yeah.
So each to their own, as far as that's concerned. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you also say in your bio that you're into anarchist feminism. I like that. What does that mean to you?
Well, it was basically like a short way of saying I'm into both anarchism and feminism, but obviously, if you're, I don't know, I don't think there's like anarchism without feminism, because
Mm.
people tend to think like feminism tries to build like a matriarchy, but it's not.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about that, isn't there? And I think I was very confused about the term feminism, like
Yeah,
having grown up in a culture where, you get told about the angry feminists, the man-hating feminists, and you're like,
yeah,
whoa, and that's the kind of thing you grow up with. And then I got chatting to a friend years ago, and she actually said, no, feminism is about equality. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
because
So,
that's just where it started, like with hostility against women, like anything that's deemed like
uh-huh.
feminine, because it's not like misogyny. It's not just like against women really, because there's
Mm.
like trans men and non-binary people who
Yeah.
experience that as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's some feminists, I don't understand why they want the matriarchy, and they say like, oh, but a matriarchy is not like patriarchy. But I feel like just wait 1,000 years and it's gonna be. And I feel
Mm.
like people who want, I mean, sometimes people use the matriarchy as an inclusive term to mean, well, like women and non-binary people and trans men and stuff, they have like more power as well. But I feel like it's just another way to like slightly misgender trans people.
Mm.
And it just feels like non-binary erasure, but progressive. And I'm putting big air quotes on progressive. Like that's just what it feels like.
Mm.
Because the patriarchy doesn't see non-binary people, and why would a matriarchy?
Mm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't think there should be any hierarchies at all, which is
Yeah.
why I would say my feminism is like anarchist as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you define anarchy?
There's just no unjustified hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is now, like with the government and stuff, like people just like have authority over you that they shouldn't necessarily have. It would make
Mm.
more sense if like it would be more horizontal rather than vertical. I think there's some authority that's justified. Actually, I don't even know who would necessarily call it authority, but like
Mm-hmm.
parents need to have some say about what their children do, like to keep them safe and stuff. Like that's very
Yeah.
justified. But then I don't think it's justified for the police to tell you can't smoke weed or anything. Like it just doesn't really harm anyone, like that kind of thing. And
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, also like teachers, like there's so many people who have like authority and they actually like abuse it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's so many teachers who are just yeah, they're just bad. They abuse their authority and like
Mm.
give students like bad grades and are sometimes like even like emotionally abusive to their students and stuff just because they have so much authority and they think they can get away with it.
Mm.
I don't know. I feel like if the teacher, for example, and the student would be like on the same level, it's just a lot. It's just a nicer learning atmosphere as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you see that in all sorts of positions of power, the abuse of that, and even like in the medical system, to be honest.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And in a way it's like it's great when you see people just come and work together and come together in a way that benefits everyone
Yeah.
rather than because one thing I don't like is when doctors approach you in a way like I'm here on this pedestal and I know better than you. And in some way, maybe they do, but in other ways, they really don't. And I think it just has to be like a co creation and a coming together rather than a me versus them or I know better than you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's just unhealthy. And that feels to be like abuse of power.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes doctors just act like they know your body better than you, what
Yeah.
you need or something. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like, for example, I want to get a hysterectomy, but
Hmm.
people like they just keep telling me, "Oh no, you're too young. Like, what if you want to have children? What if you change your mind?" I'm like, I don't want children. Like, I know that. I've known that since I was like 5 years old, but they just don't believe
Wow.
me.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, a conversation I had with Harris a few episodes ago, they were talking about a friend of theirs who it took them 10 years to actually get a hysterectomy because
Yeah,
they kept being told the same thing. Like, oh, what if you change your mind? You might not. Yeah.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I have emailed like some places, and I might be able to do it privately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's still a lot of money. I mean, it's worth it, but like, it's
Yeah.
I kind of understand that they might not be doing it on the NHS because it's for me at least, it's not like medically necessary. Like I don't have any disorders or anything.
Mm.
But even some of those private clinics, I asked for like what my options are. Like some of them said like, "Oh no, you're too young," because I made sure to like state my age because I don't want like, any like late disappointment when they suddenly find out my age. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
you don't do that because I'm 22 at the moment,
Right.
and yeah, it's just like they
Mm.
feel like they can regulate our bodies somehow. It's like,
Hmm.
ugh,
Yeah. Yeah. And something I was looking into recently was the word sovereignty and autonomy and the
yeah,
difference between them because I feel autonomy is you're still in a place of where other people have the final say about you, whereas
yeah,
sovereignty is more about it's your decision, your right, your yeah, it's all up to you basically. So we do have autonomy in certain ways, but that's not enough really. I like the idea of sovereignty
yeah,
and just making my own mind up about what I do with my body or not.
yeah. So that's why consider myself like also an anarchist, like because of those power
Mm,
imbalances, but also just because of those power imbalances we talk about constantly. Like I don't want white privilege or cis privilege or able privilege and all that stuff. I don't want that to exist at all. I mean,
mm, yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people are not even aware of all that, to be fair. I mean, I have all those privileges, basically.
yeah,
And it's something that I take for granted a lot of the time, that I'm not even really consciously aware of. I mean, more and more so now, the more conversations I have with people. But yeah, yeah.
yeah. People get really mad when you say you don't want like cisness to exist because they
Mm.
think you're trying to abolish cis people. But I'm just like, no, it's not like I'm just trying because like
Yeah.
if
It's
you
like you're
abolish the
canceling
yeah
cis. You're trying to cancel me.
no, it's just like we're
Yeah.
trying because if cisness doesn't exist, there's not this power imbalance. Like you still have your gender. Like you keep your fucking gender. I don't want it. I'm sorry
Yeah.
for swearing.
No, that's fine. You're totally
um,
fine. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Like keep your gender. Like I just yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people also talking about abolishing whiteness. Like they're not trying to like kill all white people or anything. That's not what it is at all. But like, this people just hear what they want to hear, and they
Oh,
love to be
totally.
outraged at everything.
Yeah, language and communication, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
they took like 5 minutes to read into it a bit more, they would know what it was about. But they
Yeah,
don't.
but I
They
think
don't want to give
people,
up the privilege at all.
yeah. Yeah, and I think people like to be reactive, don't they? And just
Yeah.
get angry and have arguments and stuff. That is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You said you love languages as well. Do you speak any more than English and German, I guess?
I did learn French at school for 5 years, but
Yeah.
I forgot a lot of it. And then
Uh-huh.
learned Spanish for another 4 years. But
Hmm.
it's also getting rusty because I'm not really using it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like my Dutch is getting really bad because I am Dutch, but
No.
I come from the south and we speak a dialect which is quite close to German and it's got French influences as well. And if I have to speak Dutch, just standard Dutch, I really struggle and I have to really think very hard. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's much easier to keep up. Like if you're learning English as a second language, it's a lot easier to learn that and actually keep it active in your brain because it's just
Mm,
everywhere. Like even like everywhere on the internet it is, or then some German stuff you can buy in the shop has like actually English names, so you're surrounded
mm,
by it a lot because it's
yeah.
like the world language, so it's like a lot easier to not forget than like French or Spanish, even though they're like very
Mm.
common too.
Yeah, yeah. I find Spanish is a very dominant language in my head because I think it's one of the last ones I learned, and
Yeah.
that's stuck with me. And Klingon, I'm learning Klingon, so that's fun. As you do, yeah. Do you feel then it's easier to express your gender in English than it is in German?
Yeah, because
Hmm.
German is like quite a gendered language. Like we have
Yeah.
feminine, masculine, neutral like nouns. So like every noun is like gendered
Hmm.
for one of those three.
Yeah.
And people tend to, I don't know, it's weird because people say like I the first pronoun that wasn't he or she that I used in German was like it's, but in German, and people kept saying like, oh no, that's objectifying, don't use that, even
Hmm.
though he or she is sometimes is used for objects so much. Like in German, the
Hmm.
chair is masculine, so like if you talk about the chair but like replace it with a pronoun, it would be he. So I don't know how it in German would be like more objectifying, but I don't know. But
Yeah, that's really tricky, isn't it?
it's
Yeah.
weird. But well, because we don't really have any pronouns that are not neopronouns
Hmm.
that non-binary people could use. That's why a lot of non-binary people in Germany use like he or she still, or they sometimes they use both, or they just use no pronouns at all.
Hmm.
But when I came out, I started using they them in English pretty much immediately.
Hmm.
But for about a year, I still used she her in German because I thought I would be fine with it. But then
Hmm.
I wasn't.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I saw some people on the internet using it but in German. I think also like somehow I don't know why it sounds nicer in German. It would be S
Hmm.
sign.
Hmm.
I don't know why it sounds nice. I guess it
It
sounds like
does.
less harsh. I don't know.
Yeah, it does actually. I
Um,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, so the pronouns are a problem. I mean, at this point in German, I also use like any pronouns that are not he or she. Like we do have lots of neopronouns in German as well.
Hmm.
Um, they keep coming. There's so
Yeah.
many. I like it though.
That's a
Like
good thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really
So do
is.
you like using neopronouns yourself, like in English?
Yeah,
Which ones
I
do you like?
I think my favorite one that I came across was V Vervis. I came across it like I don't know, must have been 2017, but that was back when I didn't use new pronouns yet because I only started using them like last year, like maybe in October or something. Like not even that long ago. I don't know why I didn't, but
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. That's an interesting one because that sounds almost, it's got a German twang to it, that one, in a way. Maybe that's why
yeah.
you like it. I don't know. Maybe.
I never really noticed, but yeah,
Yeah.
I like how
For
it
to me, I don't know, maybe not to other people. They might be like, what on earth are you talking about? But yeah.
I like how it looks. I like how it sounds because I don't know. I like the letter V, I guess.
Mm. Mhm.
But in
Yeah.
German, we also have the problem with like words that describe people. Because, for example, a friend in Germany, like a male friend would be Freund, but a
Mhm.
female friend would be Freundin.
Mhm.
So what do we call non-binary people? And like we have
Yeah.
the most common thing that we do is we either put an asterisk or like an underscore in between Freund and the I-N ending. So we have like
Uh,
Freundin, and that's how we say it. Like we say it with a little break in between. And that's
yeah. There's
become like
like
quite,
she or he or she, like S/he.
yeah, but
That's
I don't even
like
know.
that. Yeah, in
Kinda.
English.
I don't even know how you say that in English though. But like I don't know if
Yeah.
there's like a way to pronounce it, because in German there's actually a way to you pronounce it. Like you just leave a little break. You don't say Freundin, you say Freundin. Like,
Ah, okay. Yeah.
but it's become really common. Like people even started using that in with like medication adverts on German TV or something. At the end they have like, oh, if you have any questions, ask your doctor or your pharmacist, and they started like gendering it like that. Like they're actually using it on TV now. I mean, I don't know. I don't watch German TV, but my sister told me.
Mhm.
So some people don't like it. Obviously, like conservatives don't like it because then they would have to admit that we exist and they don't like that. But
Right.
even, I don't know, like some non-binary people don't like it. I don't know why, but then they have suggestions that sound really infantilizing. I don't know. I mean, have you heard that some non-binary people don't like being called NBs because they think
Yeah.
it's, I
Yeah.
don't have that at all because it just sounds like English to me, so it's fine. But then
Mhm.
another German version, like people sometimes say would be like gender inclusive, would be like Freundy,
Mhm.
rather than Freund, a Freunde, like with a Y at the end. I'm like, well, I think that's really infantilizing because we don't have like words that end with a Y with an I. Like we
Yeah.
don't have that, so it's like very different. Like in English, there's so many words ending with a Y or something, or like IE or something. So
Mm.
that's why I don't mind NB at all. But
Yeah.
I don't know. And they say like, oh, it's more inclusive, but it's like I know for a fact because there's so many German and binary people as well who think NB is infantilizing. And
Mm.
I'm sure they will think Freundy is infantilizing too, so it's not really inclusive. Like
Mm.
the majority of the people you're trying to include doesn't feel included. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Really, I don't know, it's complicated. I like
It
sometimes
is.
what people come up with, like the ideas, but I've seen other ones as well, but like none of them have quote on like the asterisk version or the underscore version. I don't know. It
Mm.
doesn't. Yeah, because there was people have used a slash for a while, like they put the feminine in ending in brackets, but that
Mhm.
just feels like you're putting women in brackets. Like no, like they're
Yeah.
less important, or like the
Yeah.
slash. But the slash has been. It's weird because it's that the symbol matters. Like because the slash has been used in a binary way. Like non-binary people were never included when the slash was used.
Yeah.
So we don't
Yeah.
like that. So we started using the asterisk. I think it has something to do with like it being a wildcard symbol on Google something. I don't entirely understand.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
basically, that represents like all genders, and then the underscore also it's like a type and field or something. That's basically what like the symbolism is.
Mm.
So it kind of matters what you put in. Like you can't just put anything in there. I don't know. It's very
Wow.
strange.
Yeah. It is. I mean, I can't even begin to think about in Dutch, we've got similar issues with that. And I wouldn't even, because in a way, English is the they, them is it's just so easy. But it just takes some getting used to. And, no matter what the argument is, some people resist it because it just is a new thing for them and they just find it, they
Yeah.
resist change or something, which is a human thing. But yeah, they, them, it's just kind of so easy when you get your head round. It's such an easy way to be gender neutral.
Yeah.
And it kind of fits in the language in a bit of a quirky way, but it does. And it's so much easier compared to other languages, like you were saying with German
Yeah.
and Dutch, same thing. Spanish and French, I think they've all got their own issues with this, being inclusive, using inclusive language when it comes to gender. So yeah,
I was so confused when I first on the internet saw someone to use singular they. I'm like, wait, who are you talking about? There's only one person here. I was so
yeah,
confused. Like, I didn't understand
yeah,
what it was. And that was even like before I knew like people were using it for non-binary people or anything.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that was because people say like, oh, you're using it for singular people all the time, but then people who might have trouble with it, because when you use it, most of the time you use it for like very non-specific people. Like if you say someone lost their wallet, it's like someone you have no concept of whatsoever. Like you don't even know who that is. So it's quite different than using it for a person that you know what they look like. You can picture them in your head. So I think that's kind of hard sometimes for people to wrap their head around. But people just they try to compare it to, oh, it's easy because you use it for this non-specific person, but it's still quite different to use it for a specific person.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's almost like we're doing them a disservice, or we're disrespecting them by being neutral about them, so that it's almost like, I think the more you know about them, the more you should use that information on some level, I suppose. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's funny that you just said about the wallet thing, because I watched a video, like a short video the other day from Jeffrey Marsh. I don't know if you saw it. And they were talking about using inclusive language, and that we use it all the time, exactly like you say. Oh, someone left their wallet.
Yeah,
I hope they come back and get it.
I feel like it's the go-to example.
Yeah, yeah, it totally is. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add or talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
Maybe that people should stop trying to create like new, smaller binaries for non-binary people, because what I see sometimes is like people. Well, firstly, people like to divide non-binary people by assigned gender. Like, I don't like using AFAB or AMAP language really, like, because that's something that happened to me in the past. Because people like say like, oh, this person is AFAB, but it means assigned female at birth. So like, they were AFAB in the past. Like they use it as an adjective. Like it's something that's still happening to them. Like it happened to me 22 years ago. Like so, people like to divide us into like binaries like that. But then sometimes they also, I don't know, like people call all AFAB non-binary people transmasculine, which, or like all AMAP non-binary people transfeminine, which is like, I don't know. And then it's just not true, because there's like people who were AFAB, but they are non-binary women, or they are like me. Like I don't really use transmasculine at all. Like it doesn't fit me.
Yeah.
Or when they try to like talk about a specific thing, like people who take testosterone, they use like transmasculine people, even though there's like transmasculine people who are not on testosterone, and people who are on testosterone who are not transmasculine. Like this, I don't know, people don't say what they mean, like they were trying to get an easy way out. And it's like same thing we like criticize in cis people when they say women when they mean people with uteruses or something. But then they turn around and do the same thing to non-binary people. Like, just, I don't know, it's like, just say what you mean, like, be specific. Because then you just don't misgender people or exclude people or anything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. That's making me think about how I think we all want to understand things. I think we have an innate desire to understand things and people and life and all sorts of things. But I think you have to be so careful that you don't get like a bit fundamentalist about it. It's like, oh, now I've learned all these terms and I know what they mean, and then sort of rigidly stick to them. And then in the process of doing so, like invalidating other people's experiences,
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It's just, I don't know, like, just use them when you specifically refer to people who use that label, like, or like just use it when you know people actually like that label. Like, I don't know.
Exactly, yeah. It's very person specific and dependent. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was so fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for talking to me about all this. Yeah.
Okay.
You have a podcast as well, by the way. It's in German, though, isn't it?
Yeah. It's called Jay sagt Zeugs. It just means Jay says stuff. I'm very uncreative. It's just started. I got this name when I moved to England. Before that, I sold all my stuff on eBay, and I didn't know what to call my eBay account, so I called it Jay Sells Stuff. So now all my usernames are like, depending on where it is, like Jay does stuff. Like, I don't know. I wanted to do it in German because I feel like we are not having certain conversations in German at all. Like, no one, I think there's no podcast about asexuality in German, and there's no podcast about aromanticism in German. I mean, there's not even like an aro-specific podcast really in English. I mean, there's some that talk about both asexuality and aromanticism, but there's like nothing that's like specific to that, when there's loads of English podcasts talking about asexuality specifically. Because we're like really invisible, and it's even worse in German.
Yeah.
And we also have the problem that we don't have a lot of the vocabulary in German, like especially
Yeah.
for like A-spec stuff, because we don't really have those conversations. Because I don't know if you ever heard about those terms like sex aversion and sex favorability, sex indifference and stuff. I don't know if you heard about that when you spoke to asexual people before, but we don't
No.
really. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, some of them I've heard. The sex aversion, actually, I've heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other ones
Mm.
I hadn't. No.
Well, sex indifferent just means like you don't really care whether you have sex or not, and sex favorability means you want to have sex regardless of whether you experience attraction or not.
Right.
And those are useful terms, but we don't really have words for that in German that are like
Okay.
used. So
Hmm.
I try to like basically translate those words, like sometimes just use them. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know,
someone has to
because
do it, so why
yeah,
not you, right?
because it's hard. It just makes it hard to find people in German, like who speak German, who have the same identity as you, because you try to like type in
Mm.
keywords somewhere and just nothing comes up because it just doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, new language gets created every day,
Yeah,
and you might as well
yeah,
do it. you know.
yeah. But
Yeah.
also like the German queer podcast world is like it's just full of cis gay men and cis lesbians. Like there's not a lot of
Hmm.
there's some trans people and some non-binary people, and there's like no aspec people really. It's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Sounds
So
like it could use some of that representation then. Yeah.
yeah,
Nice one. Oh, well, good luck with your pod and
thank you.
everything. And yeah, thank you again for talking with me about all this.
You're welcome.
You can find out more details on the website at 50shadesofgender.com/J, as in JAY, where you can also read the transcript, and you can find Jay on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links to all these can be found on the podcast page. Thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. You can find us online at 50shadesofgender.com and on social media. If you'd like to support us, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Plans start from only $1 a month. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender for more details. We hope you will listen again. Until then, stay curious and open-minded. Yeah, so I mean, what have you heard so far with regards to the podcast? What made you want to be part of it?
Ooh, honestly, I'm not even. I I can't shut up about my own experience, so might as well go on a podcast.
Oh, totally.
Um,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Good. Me too. How was that for you?
It was nice. I like talking about all this stuff. Like I don't know. I don't really ever talk about all this stuff out loud. Really, I just usually
Yeah.
write it down somewhere. Like if I don't know
Okay.
on maybe if I write text on Instagram or on Twitter or something. But I
Uh,
never talk about this out loud, and I'm kind of glad to have a platform to do that, because I think some of this might be important for other people to hear, that they, I don't know,
absolutely.
learn
Yeah.
stuff maybe about other people, maybe about themselves even.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree.